13 Things People Get Wrong About the 1970s. What images pop into our heads when we think about the 70s? Is it endless disco dance floors shimmering under mirror balls? Or maybe the scenes of crime-ridden, decaying big cities straight out of movies? Or perhaps long lines of cars waiting for gas? And we can't forget the fashion style many called a disaster, can we? While we often have specific memories and images of the 70s, the truth is usually far more complex. Is that the whole story? Are we missing something? Or perhaps misunderstanding this turbulent decade? In this video, we're going to dive deeper into common misconceptions about the 70s and unveil the truth behind them. You might just be surprised. Let's take a trip back in time and explore. American cities were collapsing and overrun with dangerous crime. When people think about major U.S. cities in the 70s, especially New York, images from movies like The Warriors often come to mind. A grim picture of dilapidated neighborhoods, rampant gangs, out-of-control crime, and a seemingly helpless police force. It felt like these urban centers were on the verge of complete collapse. But was the situation really that bad? The truth is, while crime did increase in the 70s, the more dramatic rise actually happened in the 60s. Data shows crime increased 126% in the 60s, compared to 60% in the 70s. In fact, the violent crime rate in the US in 2013 was even higher than in 1978. This doesn't mean the 70s had no crime problems, but the picture often painted is overly pessimistic. The fires in the Bronx, often seen as a symbol of urban decay, might have been partly due to improved fire response times, making it seem like fires were happening more constantly. More importantly, alongside that dark side, 70s cities also had an incredibly vibrant underground art scene and a booming, diverse culture. There was a unique sense of freedom that today's rigidly planned cities can hardly match. New York, for instance, wasn't just about crime. It was the hub of the postmodernism movement, the birthplace of disco music that dominated the era, and the cradle of queer culture. Think about the relentless creative energy flowing through those streets, chaotic as they might have seemed. It was a period full of contradictions, balancing a dark side of safety with an unprecedented explosion of cultural creativity. It was chaotic, but also bursting with energy and vitality. The 60s abruptly ended on January 1st, 1970. Many people think the 60s, with its image of hippies, peace and love, and major protest movements, was a period completely separate from the 70s, often seen as the era of punk rock, disco, and personal chaos. As if, on New Year's Eve 1969, everything suddenly changed completely. But the reality was different. The truth is, the 70s were a continuation and transformation of the 60s. Many of the major political and social trends of the 60s carried strongly into the early 70s. The Vietnam War, a central focus of the 60s, didn't actually end until 1975. Anti-war songs continued to be released and become popular in the early 70s. The anti-war movement didn't just disappear, it lasted until 1973. Many of the biggest rock bands of the 70s, those musical icons of the era like Led Zeppelin, actually started their careers in the late 60s. Some historians even argue that the hippie movement and its cultural influence perhaps reached its peak in the 70s itself, as the lifestyle and mindset became more mainstream. However, the idealization of the 60s gradually faded, giving way to disillusionment and personal searching in the 70s. Tragic events like the Altamont concert or the Manson family murders are seen as symbols, showing how the hippie dream collided with harsh reality. It was a complex transitional phase, where the grand ideals of the 60s had to face and transform within the new social and economic context of the 70s. The 70s had the worst style, fashion, interior design. This is definitely a common misconception. When the style of the 70s is mentioned, the first images that pop into many people's minds are thick shag carpets, eye-watering bright interior colors like avocado green or harvest gold, dark wood paneling, and fashion featuring wide bell-bottom pants and open-chested shirts. Many call the 70s the era of dead aesthetics, but here's the fun truth. Every decade has its fashion fails or designs that we look back on and find amusing, and the 70s were no sole exception. However, many designers and true fashion lovers actually consider the 70s to be one of the greatest decades for fashion and design. Can you believe it? A lot of design trends from the 70s are making a comeback and strongly influencing modern style today. The wildness and boldness in 70s style was actually the result of a strong shift towards individual self-expression. This was sparked by the liberation movements of the 60s. People felt much freer to decorate their homes and choose their clothes as they liked, no longer bound by the rigid rules or norms of previous decades. Remember the signature interior items from this period. Shag carpets in every color imaginable. Those colorful beanbag chairs you could sink into comfortably. Wood paneling that gave a cozy, or maybe slightly dark, depending on your view, feeling. Rotary dial telephones were the center of the family. Sunburst clocks on the wall, trippy lava lamps, macrame decorations hanging plants or walls with a bohemian vibe, or those familiar household items in avocado green or harvest gold. The wobbly waterbed, popcorn ceilings, rattan furniture, comfy brown leather armchairs, and of course, the vinyl record player or the Polaroid camera for instant pics. For fashion, how could we forget bell-bottom pants as an icon, or daring tube tops for hot summer days? The feathered hairstyle everyone wanted to copy, especially after seeing Farrah Fawcett, and those unique earth shoes with their negative heel design. Do you still remember that blinding orange beanbag chair at your aunt's house? Or the glowing lava lamp in your friend's bedroom? Those items weren't just things. They were an expression of the personality and free spirit of the time. This was the most violent decade in recent history. With stories of rising crime, notorious serial killer cases, terrorist attacks, and shocking plane hijackings, many people believe the 70s were the most violent and dangerous period the U.S. had ever experienced. A sense of instability and fear seemed to permeate everything. But did that feeling completely reflect the truth? As we discussed, the more significant increase in violent crime actually happened in the 60s, while the 70s did have serious and frightening issues like the cases of the Son of Sam or the Zodiac Killer, the Jonestown tragedy, terrorist attacks, and plane hijackings. Overall violent crime wasn't worse than in recent years. In fact, the rate was even lower than in 2013. A key factor influencing our perception of violence is how information is conveyed. Today, with the internet and social media, we are exposed to news about crime and violence more frequently, faster, and often with less filtering or context than before. Remember, back then, news about violence was mainly confined to a 30-minute evening TV broadcast. You weren't constantly seeing gruesome incidents popping up on your phone or computer screen all day. This can make us feel like the world today is more violent, when the reality is much more complex. It's true that the 70s had frightening aspects, especially for those living in big cities or directly affected by crime. But the feeling of the world is more violent now might be influenced by the non-stop stream of information we receive every day. Growing up without the internet, with less direct exposure to violence from the outside world, could provide a different sense of safety. What do you remember most about the 70s? Leave a comment below. The 70s were boring and lacked cultural creativity. After the powerful cultural explosion of the 60s with rock and roll and protest movements, many people think the 70s were a decline, lacking creative energy, leaving only excess and blandness, as if everything interesting ended in 1969. But here's what excites me most about the 70s. Quite the opposite. The 70s were actually one of the most brilliantly creative periods in so many cultural fields. In music, the 70s are often called the golden age of pop music. There was an incredible diversity of genres, from glittering glam rock, complex prog rock, powerful heavy metal, to gentle folk, captivating reggae, down-to-earth pub rock, then the explosive rise of rebellious punk rock, vibrant disco, and pioneering new wave. So many classic albums that defined a generation were released in 1971 alone. Live gigs were cheap and easy to access. Do you remember the feeling of carefully listening to a newly bought vinyl record, reading the lyrics printed on the sleeve, and discovering every detail of the album? Or the convenience, and sometimes inconvenience, of those 8-track tapes in the car? Cinema also experienced a golden age of Hollywood in the 70s. The emergence and development of great directors like Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, and Martin Scorsese shaped modern cinema. A slew of iconic, classic, and long-lasting influential films were born. Jaws, The Godfather, Star Wars, Taxi Driver, Annie Hall. Visual arts also saw the development of many important artists who started their careers, like Basquiat, Jeff Koons, and Keith Haring. Television? That was the golden age of Saturday morning cartoons. The whole family gathering in front of the TV on Saturday mornings was an essential ritual. Cartoons like Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, The Jetsons, Super Friends were the childhood of a whole generation. Then there were iconic family sitcoms like Happy Days, set in the 50s, but a product of the 70s. The Brady Bunch, The Partridge Family. Groundbreaking and incredibly engaging educational shows like Schoolhouse Rock, with catchy songs to help you learn grammar, math, or history. Or The Electric Company, featuring a young Morgan Freeman, teaching you to read and understand words creatively. And we can't forget variety, iconic shows like Charlie's Angels with beautiful and action-packed female detectives, or The Muppet Show full of humor and famous guests. Do you remember the feeling of having to watch TV on a fixed schedule? No binge watching like now? Or the feeling of waiting for the images on film strips to change with that beep sound in class? Games also had major breakthroughs. The birth of the first video games like Pong started a whole revolution. The first home game consoles appeared in the 70s, paving the way for the computer revolution later. Video games became a cultural phenomenon, with the first home game console released in 1972. Cable television also began to spread, expanding home entertainment options. And toys? Who could forget the big wheels for fast rides? Stretch Armstrong, who stretched. The Trapper Keeper, late 70s. To help you organize everything at school? The Fisher-Price Chatter. Telephone you pulled around the house? The 70s were far from boring. It was a period where creativity truly blossomed on all cultural fronts, shaping many things we still love and remember today. The 70s were the me decade, where everyone was only concerned with themselves. The concept, the me decade, is often used to describe the 70s as a period where people shifted focus from the social change of the 60s to personal searching, therapy, and self-expression. Many see this as a sign of selfishness after the large movements subsided, but is labeling an entire decade this way overly simplistic? The truth is, the concept of the me decade is an oversimplification, and certainly not true for everyone. It's true there was a shift towards self-exploration and self-care, but this can be seen as a result of disillusionment after the major social change efforts of the 60s didn't achieve the desired results. When big ideals faced difficulties, people turned inward to find meaning. Much more importantly, social movements continued strongly in the 70s, just perhaps less loudly or in different forms than in the 60s. The gay rights movement became prominent after the Stonewall riots in late 1969 and continued to grow strongly. The feminist movement achieved significant legal progress, like the Equal Pay Act or the Violence Against Women Act, and almost passed the Equal Rights Amendment, ERA, a struggle that lasted throughout the decade. Worker movements and movements for the rights of Black and Asian Americans also had important struggles to protect and reclaim their rights. Personal self-expression in style, art, or life choices in the 70s can also be seen as a form of personal liberation, breaking traditional constraints, rather than just pure selfishness. Compared to today, every generation has a certain level of self-focus. Criticizing the 70s as solely the me decade isn't entirely fair. Thank you for watching. To continue with more content, comment yes to let us know you're still following. The oil crisis and gas lines lasted the entire decade. One of the most iconic and memorable, in a negative way, images of the 70s is the scene of long lines of cars at gas stations. Many people think this shortage and soaring gas prices lasted throughout the 70s, a continuous hardship of the era. But what was the reality of this crisis? It's true there was a severe oil crisis in 1973. It happened after the Yom Kippur War, when the OPEC countries, Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, imposed an oil embargo on the U.S. and some other nations to protest their support for Israel. This caused a major shortage and sharp price increases for oil and gas worldwide. However, what many people mistakenly believe is that it lasted the entire decade. The truth is, the OPEC oil embargo only lasted 6 months, ending in March 1974. While oil prices remained high and fluctuated afterward, the biggest crisis, causing the severe gas lines, had ended by around 1975. It was a difficult, dark spot of the decade, one of the bummers, as people used to say, but it wasn't a continuous 10-year situation like many still remember. Do you still remember the anxiety of seeing the gas gauge drop low? Or the scene of having to wake up early to line up for gas? It truly was a difficult and inconvenient period, but luckily, it didn't drag on like the legend suggests. Divorce rates skyrocketed and destroyed the traditional family structure. Another common misconception is that the 70s saw record-high divorce rates, often quoted as 50%, and this was seen as a sign of moral decay, destroying the traditional family structure and causing many social problems. So, what's the truth about divorce rates in the 70s? It's true that the divorce rate did increase to higher levels in the late 70s, peaking at about 5.3 cases per 1,000 Americans in 1979. This was a significant increase compared to previous decades. However, the main reason behind this increase is often overlooked. The primary cause was that states began passing no-fault divorce laws, starting with California in 1969. Before that, to get a divorce, one party had to prove the other's fault, e.g., adultery, abuse. This new law made it easier for people, especially women, to leave abusive, violent, or simply unhappy marriages without having to prove fault in court. This, combined with the strength of the feminist movement at the time, empowered people to seek personal happiness and safety instead of just accepting an unfulfilling marriage for external stability. This rise in divorce is seen as a necessary societal adjustment to better align with the realities of life and personal desires, rather than a rejection of marriage or family in general. It's also worth noting that actual divorce rates have steadily decreased since the 80s, and the figure 50% of all marriages end in divorce that people often hear has never actually been true. Admittedly, this change could cause difficulties and challenges for the traditional family structure. But we also need to look at the positive side. It helped many people find happiness and safety by allowing them to choose to leave bad marriages. Technology in the 70s was too backward. Life was primitive. Many young people today, looking back at the 70s, think it was a completely pre-digital era. No smartphones, no internet, no social media, no Netflix. Life seems too primitive, lacking convenience and technological excitement. But the truth is, many technologies we consider modern today took their crucial first steps in the 70s. It's true life was very different from now, but the 70s were by no means backward in that sense. Many revolutionary technologies were born or started becoming popular in this decade. The first mobile phone call was made in 1973. The first personal computers appeared in the 70s, paving the way for the computer revolution later. Video games became a cultural phenomenon, with the first home game console released in 1972. Cable television also began to spread, expanding home entertainment options. And let's remember those iconic technological items, simple but providing unique experiences. The rotary dial telephone wasn't just a communication tool, it was the center of the family, where people waited for important calls. The click, click, click sound when you dialed a number still lingers in many people's memories. The vinyl record player was the soul of music, bringing a warm sound quality and a physical experience when you placed the record on the machine. The Polaroid camera brought the magic of instant photos. The feeling of anticipation waiting for the image to gradually appear on that white square film is something digital cameras can hardly replace. And those 8-track tapes allowed you to take music everywhere, even if changing tracks was a bit clunky. These technologies, though rudimentary by today's standards, were major breakthroughs at the time and brought their own unique joys and conveniences to life. The 70s were a period that saw the important seeds of the digital age. Disco was a fad. Bring up the 1970s, and you can bet someone will shout, "Disco," followed by a mental image of John Travolta in a white suit, pointing skyward on a glowing dance floor. But to write off disco as just a flashy fad from Saturday night dance scenes is missing the heart of what disco really meant, and still means. Disco wasn't born in a Hollywood soundstage. It grew out of the 1960s underground club scene, particularly in discotheque, hence the name. It was a movement powered by marginalized communities, especially LGBTQ folks, who were often excluded from mainstream nightlife. In those hidden clubs, disco wasn't just music, it was liberation, a pulsing beat that let people feel safe, free, and seen. By the time the mainstream caught on in the mid-70s, disco exploded, but with success came backlash. Disco became a lightning rod for criticism, some of it driven less by musical taste and more by prejudice. Rock fans rallied against it, sometimes with an edge of bigotry tied to its diverse roots. But guess what? Disco didn't die. Sure, it left the spotlight for a while, but its rhythm never stopped. Today's artists, from The Weeknd to Dua Lipa, still carry that glittering torch. Disco wasn't a fad. It was a revolution in 4/4 time. Did you experience the things we talked about today? Or is there something about the 70s that we missed, something you want to share? Watergate ruined the Republicans. When people hear the word Watergate, most instantly think of political scandal, and for good reason. It was such a seismic event in American politics that we still attach "gate" to any scandal today, even though the original had nothing to do with water. Watergate was actually the name of the hotel where it all went down. In 1974, the scandal rocked the nation so hard that President Richard Nixon became the first U.S. president to resign from office. He stepped down not out of humility, but to avoid a near-certain impeachment. And conveniently, by resigning, he cleared the path for his vice president, Gerald Ford, to take over and later pardon him, sparing Nixon from potential prosecution. You might think this would have completely destroyed the Republican Party, but here's the twist: it didn't. Sure, the GOP took a hit in the short term. Democrats cleaned up in the 1974 midterms, and Jimmy Carter won the presidency in 1976. But the long game told a different story. In the years that followed, the Republican Party reinvented itself. The moderate voices faded, and a more hardline conservative identity emerged, one that set the stage for Ronald Reagan's 1980 landslide and shaped GOP politics for decades to come. Other misconceptions about the 70s. Besides the major misconceptions we've just analyzed, the 70s also have some other misunderstandings we should clarify. Children were safer back then. Many people who grew up in the 70s remember a childhood of playing freely outside, cycling everywhere, coming home when the streetlights came on without worrying as much as parents do today. They see this as proof that it was safer back then. But the truth is that freedom often came with much higher risks of accidents. Car accidents happened more frequently and were more severe due to loose safety laws, no mandatory seat belts, unsafe child seats. Playground accidents were also more common with dangerous metal equipment and hard asphalt surfaces. And toys like trampolines without surrounding nets also posed many dangers. Safety regulations in general were loose or non-existent for many things related to children. Today, child safety is much more prioritized, from car seats and playground design to toys. However, it must be acknowledged, modern parents' anxieties have new roots, such as fears about dangerous strangers, overwhelming traffic, and excessive exposure to negative information, making them feel the world is less safe and less likely to let their children explore freely than before. Life was simpler. In nostalgic memory, the 70s are often painted as a simple time, with fewer worries and less pressure than modern life. It's true there was simplicity in some aspects, less constant technological connection, less intrusion from the outside world into personal life. But the 70s still faced many complex and stressful issues. The threat of nuclear war from the Cold War was always present. The economy faced difficulties with high inflation and recession, political instability with scandals, Watergate, and international crises, Iran hostage crisis. Major social issues from the 60s were not fully resolved and continued to cause tension: racial discrimination, gender inequality, gay rights. Then, environmental issues began to emerge, like the impact of leaded gasoline or industrial pollution. Life in the 70s was by no means simple or carefree, as we sometimes romanticize in nostalgia. It had its own unique challenges and pressures. The 70s cannot be summarized by just a few images or stories retold. It was a decade full of contradictions, a mix of the old and the new, between lingering problems and important new progress. There were moments of freedom, creative explosion, and unique community spirit, alongside economic difficulties, social instability, and safety risks that we sometimes forget. Nostalgia is a beautiful thing. It helps us connect with the past and loved ones. But sometimes, nostalgia makes us only remember the good things and overlook the difficulties. Or conversely, focusing only on the bad things, as the media sometimes does, is also a form of distorting the truth. Understanding the 70s correctly, with both its bright and dark sides, with both misconceptions and truths, not only helps us appreciate our memories more, but also helps us better understand the present world. Many issues the 70s faced, political instability, economic difficulties, future anxieties, struggles for social justice, are still present today.
1950s details kids today just won't get. Dressing up. Picture this, the 1950s, a time when stepping out in your finest attire was simply the norm, whether you were heading to the grocery store or a Sunday picnic. It was a far cry from today's sweatpants and slippers culture. Men wouldn't dream of leaving the house without a sharp suit, complete with a tie and a hat, adding that extra touch of dapperness to their everyday look. Women, on the other hand, embraced the elegance of dresses, showcasing a femininity that was celebrated in the era. Even children were expected to uphold this standard of presentability. School clothes, church clothes, play clothes, each occasion had its designated attire, ensuring that youngsters were always appropriately dressed for the setting. And let's not forget the cardinal rule for boys: shirts tucked in, a sign of orderliness and respect. Now, this emphasis on dressing up wasn't about being stuffy or uncomfortable. It reflected a deep-seated sense of pride in one's appearance. Families in the 50s believed that looking your best was a sign of respect for yourself and those around you. It was a way of showing that you valued your place in the community and took pride in presenting yourself well to the world. Think of it as a visual handshake, a way of making a positive impression before you even uttered a word. This focus on outward appearance wasn't superficial. It was a reflection of the values and social norms that shaped the 1950s, a time when elegance and decorum were held in high regard. So, while we might find it a bit more relaxed today, there's something undeniably charming about the era's commitment to dressing to impress. A reminder that sometimes putting your best foot forward starts with putting on your best outfit. School and graduation rates. Stepping into a 1950s public school classroom would reveal a vastly different educational landscape than what we see today. Expectations for students were distinct and graduation rates significantly lower. Many young people, particularly in rural areas, opted to leave school early to enter the workforce, a decision often driven by economic necessity or a desire to contribute to their families. Completing high school wasn't regarded with the same societal importance as it is now, reflecting a different set of priorities and opportunities. Vocational training held a prominent place in the curriculum, with courses in automotive repair, woodworking, and homemaking equipping students with practical skills for the job market. The path to higher education was far less common, with only a small fraction of students pursuing college degrees. However, those who did had a distinct advantage. College tuition was significantly more affordable, allowing many students to work their way through school and graduate with minimal debt. This focus on vocational skills and the accessibility of higher education reflected the economic realities and social norms of the time. The post-war boom created a demand for skilled laborers, and vocational training provided a direct pathway to employment. Meanwhile, the affordability of college opened doors for those seeking advanced education, fostering social mobility and creating opportunities for a new generation of professionals. While the educational landscape has evolved dramatically since the 1950s, the era's emphasis on practical skills and accessible higher education offers valuable insights. It reminds us that education can take diverse forms, catering to a range of talents and aspirations. The 1950s model, with its blend of vocational training and affordable college pathways, may hold lessons for contemporary education systems as they strive to meet the needs of a diverse student population and a rapidly changing workforce. What's the biggest difference between childhood then and now that surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rock and roll. The dawn of rock and roll in the 1950s sent shockwaves through American culture, particularly among parents concerned about the music's influence on their children. Elvis Presley's swiveling hips and Chuck Berry's electrifying guitar riffs were deemed too provocative by many, sparking a moral panic in suburban communities across the nation. The era of big band music faded as radio stations embraced this new sound, dubbed by some as the devil's music. Teenagers, however, were captivated by rock and roll's rebellious spirit and infectious energy, fueling its meteoric rise in popularity. Parents, on the other hand, viewed it as a threat to traditional values, fearing its potential to corrupt the youth. They implemented measures to shield their children from its influence, banning rock and roll records from their homes and discouraging any form of engagement with the genre. What they perceived as a fleeting fad proved to be a cultural revolution, laying the groundwork for the diverse and often explicit music that dominates today's soundscape. Rock and roll's rebellious spirit challenged societal norms, paving the way for artists to push boundaries and express themselves freely. Its influence extended beyond music, impacting fashion, dance, and youth culture as a whole. While the initial wave of rock and roll may seem tame by today's standards, it marked a pivotal moment in the evolution of popular music. It shattered the conventions of the past, giving voice to a new generation and forever altering the cultural landscape. The controversy surrounding rock and roll's emergence highlights the enduring tension between generations, particularly when new forms of cultural expression challenge established norms. It reminds us that music can be a powerful force for social change, capable of both inspiring and unsettling audiences. Wonderful world of Disney and family road trips. Wednesday evenings in the 1950s and 60s were marked by a shared ritual, families gathering around the television to embark on adventures through the wonderful world of Disney. Originally known as Walt Disney's Disneyland, this anthology series captivated audiences with its enchanting tales and memorable characters. In a time with limited television programming, the Disney Special was a weekly highlight, bringing families together to experience the escapades of Davy Crockett, Johnny Tremaine, and other beloved figures. The show's format, often airing multi-part stories over several weeks, created a sense of anticipation and provided fodder for playground discussions among children. The Davy Crockett craze, with its iconic coonskin caps, was a testament to the show's influence on popular culture. Beyond the realm of television, the 1950s witnessed the rise of another beloved pastime, the family road trip. The burgeoning interstate system made traversing the country easier than ever, and roadside amenities like gas stations, restaurants, and motels sprang up along popular routes. Chains such as Holiday Inn, Howard Johnson's, and Stuckey's became familiar havens for weary travelers, offering a taste of comfort and familiarity during long journeys. Family road trips were more than just a means of transportation, they were an adventure in themselves. The anticipation of packing the car, the shared experiences along the way, and the creation of lasting memories transformed these journeys into cherished family traditions. The 1950s were a time of both technological innovation and a renewed appreciation for shared experiences. The wonderful world of Disney brought the magic of storytelling into homes across the nation, while family road trips fostered a sense of adventure and togetherness. These seemingly disparate elements reflect a common thread, the desire for connection, entertainment, and the creation of lasting memories. Whether gathered around the television or exploring the open road, families in the 1950s embraced opportunities to bond, learn, and create a tapestry of shared experiences that would shape their lives for years to come. If you could experience one thing from a 1950s, 60s childhood, what would it be? Let me know in the comments. Winding watches. Picture this, it's the 1950s, and the gentle tick-tock of a mechanical wristwatch is a familiar sound. Every morning, before heading out the door, you'd perform a little ritual, winding your watch. Battery-powered watches were still a novelty back then, so manually winding the mainspring was essential to keep those intricate gears ticking and the hands moving. It was a different time, a time when knowing how to read a traditional clock was crucial. Many clocks only had hands pointing to Roman numerals or simple tick marks, no digital displays to make it easy. It's fascinating to think that today, there are kids who've never had to decipher an analog clock face. They've grown up surrounded by digital clocks and devices that tell the time with effortless precision. But in the mid-20th century, reading a clock with hands was a fundamental skill, like tying your shoelaces or riding a bike. It's a reminder of how quickly technology can change our everyday lives and the skills we need to navigate them. Those old-fashioned watches, with their ticking mechanisms and elegant faces, represent a time when life moved at a slightly slower pace, and a bit of manual dexterity was required to keep up with the passage of time. Radio and early television. Imagine a time before streaming services and smartphones, when the heart of home entertainment resided in the warm glow of a large radio in the living room. families would huddle together in the evenings, eagerly tuning in to catch the latest adventures of their favorite radio stars. From the wholesome family dynamics of the adventures of Ozzie and Harriet to the thrilling exploits of the Lone Ranger and the heroic feats of the adventures of Superman, radio programs provided a shared experience that captivated audiences of all ages. And as technology advanced, these beloved radio shows made the leap to the small screen, ushering in a new era of entertainment television. Owning a TV in the 1950s was a mark of status, a symbol of being on the cutting edge of technological advancement. Those lucky enough to have one became the envy of the neighborhood, their living rooms transformed into portals to a world of flickering images and captivating stories. Though the screens were small and the picture black and white, television held a magical quality that transcended its technical limitations. For kids who had grown up with only the audio world of radio, seeing their favorite characters come to life on screen was nothing short of revolutionary. It was a pivotal moment in entertainment history, marking the transition from a purely auditory experience to one that engaged both sight and sound. The advent of television in the 1950s sparked a cultural shift, reshaping how families spent their leisure time and paving the way for the media-rich world we inhabit today. Those early flickering images, broadcast on tiny black and white screens, were the seeds of a revolution, forever changing the landscape of entertainment and captivating audiences for generations to come. Manners and respect for adults. In the 1950s, the social landscape was painted with a strong emphasis on good manners and respect for authority, especially towards adults. Young couples, often marrying straight out of high school, embraced their roles as parents with a firm but loving approach. Raising polite and well-mannered children was a top priority, with lessons in etiquette ingrained from a tender age. Yes, ma'am, and no, sir were not just pleasantries, they were essential building blocks of respectful communication. Children were taught to look adults in the eye when speaking or being spoken to, a gesture that conveyed attentiveness and deference. Even simple acts like asking to be excused from the dinner table were imbued with significance, reinforcing the importance of courtesy and consideration for others. This unwavering focus on manners wasn't about stifling individuality, it was about fostering a sense of social harmony and respect within the community. In a world devoid of the distractions of cell phones and social media, interpersonal interactions were paramount. Children learned to navigate social situations with grace and decorum, skills that would serve them well throughout their lives. The emphasis on respect for elders wasn't simply a matter of obedience. It reflected a deep-seated belief in the wisdom and experience of older generations. Children were encouraged to listen and learn from their elders, fostering a sense of continuity and shared values within families and communities. While societal norms have evolved, since the 1950s, the core values of politeness, respect, and good manners remain timeless. They serve as reminders of a time when social interactions were more deliberate and mindful, a time when the simple act of saying please and thank you could make a world of difference. Perhaps there's a lesson to be learned from this bygone era, a reminder that even in our fast-paced, technology-driven world, the art of respectful communication never goes out of style. Church. For many children growing up in the 1950s, the rhythm of the week was punctuated by the familiar sound of church bells. Sunday mornings were dedicated to attending services, often followed by Wednesday evening gatherings and the occasional joyous church potluck. As the post-war baby boom swelled the population, so too did the number of families filling the church pews. The 1950s witnessed a remarkable surge in church attendance, a testament to the central role that religion played in the lives of many Americans. Across the country, families prioritized their faith, viewing it as a cornerstone of their values and a source of community connection. Church attendance wasn't merely a religious obligation, it was a social event, a chance to connect with neighbors, share a meal, and build lasting bonds. The church served as a hub of community life, offering a sense of belonging and shared purpose in a rapidly changing world. The rise in church attendance during the 1950s reflected a broader societal trend of seeking stability and tradition in the aftermath of World War II. Religion offered solace and guidance in a time of uncertainty, providing a moral compass for families navigating the complexities of the post-war era. The church also played a significant role in shaping social and political discourse, with religious leaders often weighing in on issues of the day. While the landscape of religious affiliation has shifted in the decades since, the 1950s remain a significant period in American religious history. It was a time when church attendance reached unprecedented heights, reflecting the profound influence of faith on the lives of individuals, families, and communities across the nation. Movie theaters. In the 1950s, local movie theaters, often located in bustling downtown areas, typically had only 1 or 2 screens. This meant that movie selections were limited, with films rotating every week or 2. The concept of a multiplex, offering a smorgasbord of recently released films, was still on the horizon, and malls with their integrated cinemas were just beginning to emerge. For movie lovers in the 50s, this meant waiting for the desired film to arrive at their local theater, creating a sense of anticipation and excitement that's perhaps less common in today's world of instant access. However, the era did offer a unique cinematic experience, the drive-in theater. These outdoor venues provided an alternative way to enjoy movies, allowing families and friends to gather in the comfort of their cars, creating a shared experience under the stars. The limited selection and rotating schedule of movies in the 1950s fostered a different kind of movie-going culture. It encouraged audiences to embrace a wider range of genres and discover films they might not have otherwise considered. The anticipation of a new release and the shared experience of watching a film together in a communal setting created a sense of occasion that's often missing in today's fragmented entertainment landscape. Silly putty. Ah, silly putty, that iconic gooey substance that brought endless amusement to kids in the 1950s and beyond. Remember the thrill of cracking open that little red egg to reveal the pliable, bouncy wonder inside. You could stretch it, bounce it, mold it into shapes, and even press it onto newspaper comics to create perfect replicas of your favorite characters. The tactile toy of silly putty was irresistible, and its ability to capture the ink from newsprint added another layer of fascination. While silly putty is still available today, its popularity has waned considerably. The decline of print newspapers and the rise of digital media mean that fewer kids have access to the comics that once made silly putty such a captivating novelty. It's a reminder of how cultural shifts and technological advancements can impact even the simplest of childhood pleasures. TV dinners. In the 1950s, as television was becoming a fixture in American homes, the Swanson Company had a revolutionary idea. Combine the novelty of TV viewing with the convenience of a pre-prepared meal. Thus, the TV dinner was born. These compartmentalized aluminum trays, filled with classic comfort foods like turkey, mashed potatoes, and gravy, were designed to be heated in the oven and enjoyed while watching your favorite shows. The concept was an instant hit, capturing the imagination of families across the nation. The novelty of eating dinner in front of the television, combined with the ease of preparation, made Swanson TV dinners a cultural phenomenon. Other food companies quickly followed suit, offering their own versions of the convenient meal. TV dinners were particularly appealing to working mothers, who could now provide a hot, satisfying meal for their families without spending hours in the kitchen. They became a staple for middle-class American families, representing a modern approach to dining in a rapidly changing world. It's hard to imagine a time without the abundance of food delivery options we have today. But in the 1950s, the TV dinner was as close as you could get to having a restaurant-quality meal delivered to your doorstep. Jell-O. Imagine a world where Jell-O molds, weren't limited to sweet treats but extended to savory concoctions featuring suspended vegetables, ham, or even fish. Yes, you read that right, fish Jell-O. Cookbooks from the era were filled with recipes for these gelatinous creations, showcasing the ingenuity, or perhaps the questionable taste of home cooks in the 50s. For those of us who grew up with the clean plate club mentality, these savory Jell-O molds could present a formidable challenge. The prospect of forcing down a quivering mass of suspended vegetables or a gelatinous fish creation was enough to test the resolve of even the most obedient child. While Jell-O remains a popular dessert today, its role as a savory dish has thankfully diminished. Drinking and smoking while pregnant. Pregnancy today is often characterized by a cautious approach, with expectant mothers meticulously avoiding certain foods, drinks, and activities deemed potentially harmful to the developing baby. We meticulously track our caffeine intake, steer clear of deli counters, and dutifully pop our prenatal vitamins. But rewind to the 1960s, and you'll find a strikingly different picture. Back then, pregnancy wasn't viewed with the same level of hypervigilance. Women often continued their pre-pregnancy lifestyles, including habits like smoking and drinking, which are now strongly discouraged. It's not that mothers in the 60s were intentionally putting their babies at risk. The scientific understanding of the potential harms of these substances was still in its early stages. What might raise eyebrows today, seeing a pregnant woman with a cigarette in hand in old photos, was simply the norm back then. It's a stark reminder of how far our knowledge of pregnancy and fetal development has come. Looking back at those old photos can evoke a mix of emotions, perhaps amusement, surprise, or even a touch of concern. But it's important to remember that these mothers were operating within the prevailing norms and understanding of their time. The contrast between then and now highlights the incredible strides we've made in safeguarding the health of both mothers and their babies. It also underscores the importance of ongoing research and education as we continue to refine our understanding of what constitutes a healthy and safe pregnancy. Walking to school. Forget carpools and elaborate drop-off lines. Most kids simply laced up their shoes and hit the pavement. Even 6-year-olds were entrusted with navigating their neighborhoods, learning the routes and developing a sense of independence from a young age. While sometimes accompanied by siblings or neighborhood friends, the responsibility of getting to and from school rested squarely on the shoulders of these young pedestrians. Parents would hand over a packed lunch and send their kids on their way, a practice that might seem unthinkable to many parents today. Fast forward to the present, and the school commute looks vastly different. Buses and car lines have largely replaced the solitary walks of yesteryear. The sight of lengthy drop-off and pick-up lines snaking around school buildings has become a familiar scene in many communities. But the 1950s walk to school had its perks, including the opportunity for a post-school treat. With a few coins jingling in their pockets, kids could stop at a local store and indulge in a bag of penny candy, a sugary reward for a day's work at school. Even better, they could sidle up to the counter at a soda fountain and savor an ice cream soda, a malt, or an egg cream, feeling like grown-ups as they enjoyed their sweet concoctions. These simple transactions instilled valuable lessons about earning, counting, and managing money, skills that are sometimes overlooked in today's increasingly cashless society. Dangerous toys. The toy aisles of the 1950s were a different landscape compared to today's safety-conscious offerings. Back then, toys often came with a side of risk and a dash of danger. Chemistry, sets that released potentially toxic fumes, plastic melting ovens like the iconic Thingmaker, and even bee guns were considered fair game for kids. It was a time when playtime sometimes resulted in minor burns, scrapes, or even the occasional scar, all worn as badges of honor, testaments to daring adventures and lessons learned the hard way. Today, the mere hint of a choking hazard sends toys into recalled purgatory. But the 1960s generation seemed to possess a different level of resilience. They embraced the bumps and bruises that came with exploring their world and testing the limits of their toys. Of course, this isn't to say that safety wasn't a concern at all, but the approach was markedly different. There was a sense of accepting that life came with inherent risks, and learning to navigate those risks was part of growing up. It's fascinating to compare the toys of yesteryear with the carefully curated, safety-tested playthings of today. While we've undoubtedly made great strides in protecting children from harm, there's a certain nostalgia for the era of toys that encouraged creativity, experimentation, and perhaps even a little bit of risk-taking. No backpacks. Picture a 1950s school kid heading off to class. No sleek backpack slung over their shoulder, but rather an armful of textbooks, folders, and papers clutched tightly in their hands. Backpacks weren't yet the ubiquitous accessory they are today, so students relied on their own strength and grip to transport their academic burdens. Imagine those walks to and from school, especially on hot days with sweaty palms clinging to heavy textbooks. It wasn't until the 1970s that backpacks gained popularity, offering a more ergonomic and convenient way to carry school supplies. This seemingly simple shift in how kids carried their books reflects a broader evolution in design and practicality. Backpacks not only freed up students' hands but also distributed the weight more evenly, reducing strain and making the daily trek to school a bit more comfortable. It's fascinating to consider how everyday objects like backpacks can reveal subtle shifts in societal norms and technological advancements. Comment 1 if you enjoyed the content above. And don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications to follow our videos. Thank you. Board games and unorganized sports. Before the digital age captivated young minds, children in the 1950s found entertainment and social connection through the simple joy of board games. Families would gather around the table, strategizing their way through Monopoly, navigating the intricate contraptions of Mousetrap, or charting their life paths in the game of life. Board game nights were a cherished tradition, fostering laughter, friendly competition, and quality family time. The affordability of these games, often priced under $2, made them accessible to most households, further cementing their role as a staple of childhood entertainment. Beyond the confines of their homes, children in the 1950s embraced the boundless freedom of unstructured outdoor play. Organized sports were less prevalent, allowing kids to unleash their creativity and ingenuity in devising their own games. They determined the rules, chose the playing field, and selected team captains, fostering a sense of autonomy and ownership over their playtime. This unstructured approach to play fostered valuable social skills, teaching children to negotiate, collaborate, and resolve conflicts independently. The emphasis was on having fun, building friendships, and enjoying the simple pleasures of outdoor recreation. In contrast, today's children are often immersed in a world of organized sports, with schedules, coaches, and competitive pressures shaping their experience. While organized sports offer valuable benefits, the 1950s model of unstructured play reminds us of the importance of child-led initiatives and the joy of spontaneous, imaginative play. It highlights the value of fostering social skills through self-directed activities and the importance of prioritizing fun and friendship over competition and trophies. The Howdy Doody Show. In the 1950s, the Howdy Doody Show was a must-watch for kids across America. This groundbreaking NBC program was a pioneer in children's entertainment, blending puppetry with live-action segments featuring beloved characters like Buffalo Bob Smith and the ever-silent Clarabelle the Clown. The show's signature peanut gallery, filled with enthusiastic children watching live in the studio, added to its infectious energy and sense of community. As soon as the catchy theme song, "It's Howdy Doody Time," began to play, kids would rush to the living room, eager to join the fun in Doodyville. Howdy Doody's popularity soared beyond the television screen. His image adorned merchandise, from lunchboxes to toys, and he even served as a spokesperson for various sponsors. The Howdy Doody Show wasn't just entertainment, It was a cultural phenomenon that captured the hearts of a generation. It demonstrated the power of television to engage young audiences and create a shared experience that transcended geographical boundaries. For those who grew up in the 1950s, Howdy Doody wasn't just a puppet, he was a friend, a companion, and a symbol of a simpler, more innocent time in television history. Early computers. The mid-1950s marked the dawn of the computer age, but it was a far cry from the sleek, powerful devices we take for granted today. Imagine computers that occupied entire rooms, with massive cabinets housing vacuum tubes and spinning magnetic tape drives. These early behemoths cost a fortune, upwards of $15,000 per month just to rent, putting them out of reach for all but the largest corporations and government agencies. Their primary purpose was crunching numbers, performing complex calculations, and tackling scientific problems that were beyond the capabilities of human mathematicians. Forget about browsing the internet, playing games, or even storing large amounts of data. These early computers had a memory capacity of around 10 kilobytes, which is roughly equivalent to the size of a single email today. It's mind-boggling to consider how far computer technology has advanced in such a short time. These room-sized computers, with their limited capabilities and exorbitant price tags, were a far cry from the ubiquitous smartphones and laptops that have become indispensable tools in our modern lives. Yet, they were the pioneers, the first tentative steps towards the digital revolution that would transform the world. They laid the foundation for the incredible advancements we've witnessed in computing power, data storage, and accessibility. Westerns. Westerns dominated both the big screen and the small screen, capturing the imaginations of a generation. John Wayne, the quintessential cowboy hero, graced movie theaters with his rugged charm and steely gaze. Meanwhile, television screens were filled with the adventures of Matt Dillon in Gunsmoke and the Cartwright family in Bonanza. Bonanza held a special place in TV history as the first Western broadcast in color, a technological marvel that drew reviewers to the homes of lucky neighbors who owned color television sets. The vibrant hues of the Ponderosa Ranch and the Cartwrights' colorful attire added a new dimension to the Western genre, further fueling its popularity. For those not glued to the TV, the spirit of the Wild West was brought to life through imaginative play. Kids donned cowboy hats or coonskin caps, strapped on cap guns, and transformed backyards and playgrounds into frontier landscapes. The 1950s Western craze was more than just entertainment. It was a cultural phenomenon that reflected a fascination with rugged individualism, adventure, and the romanticized mythology of the American West. These shows and movies provided a lens through which kids could explore themes of heroism, justice, and the challenges of taming a wild frontier. While the popularity of Westerns has waned in recent decades, their impact on popular culture remains undeniable. They continue to evoke a sense of nostalgia for a simpler time, when cowboys were heroes and the open range represented endless possibilities. So, there you have it, a glimpse into the fascinating world of childhood in the 1950s and 60s. Did it spark any memories for you? Let me know in the comments if I missed anything. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, be sure to check out other videos in this series. And don't forget to subscribe and share Who Remembers with someone you know. Thanks for watching.
If you found this video brought back some great memories or helped you see the 70s in a new light, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next nostalgic videos. And if you have friends your age who grew up in the 70s, share this video with them. It's always more fun to reminisce together, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining me on this meaningful trip down memory lane today. See you in the next video from Who Remembers, and always keep those beautiful memories in your heart.